My name is Marcus, and I'm about to tell you about the worst wedding I ever attended, and the revenge I took 3 years later that nobody saw coming. Picture this. You drive 8 hours to be in your childhood best friend's wedding. You work 6 hours setting up tables in a mini dress and heels. You eat crusty potluck leftovers for dinner while the groomsmen drink from an open bar you're paying for out of pocket. Then you find out the bride's parents are millionaires who just didn't feel like spending money on their daughter's wedding. That was my weekend in July 2019, and I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'm not ashamed either. Some people say revenge is a dish best served cold. I say it's a dish best served with compound interest. Sarah Chen and I met in second grade when her family moved into the house next door to mine in Dearborn, Michigan. We were inseparable for 20 years. We built forts in my backyard, learned to drive together, survived high school drama, and stayed close even when I went to state college, and she went to community college before dropping out to work at her dad's property management company. I never judged her for not finishing school. Sarah was smart in different ways, street smart, people smart. She could read a room better than anyone I knew, or at least I thought she could. My dad, Robert, loved Sarah like a second daughter. When he died suddenly of a heart attack during my sophomore year of college, Sarah drove 3 hours in the middle of the night to be with me. She sat in the hospital waiting room holding my hand while my mom signed papers. She helped me pick out his casket. She gave a speech at his funeral that made everyone cry. That's the Sarah I thought I knew, the one who showed up, the one who cared. When she got engaged to Brandon Hayes in March 2018, I was genuinely happy for her. Brandon worked construction and seemed decent enough in small doses, though he had this way of dominating conversations that set my teeth on edge. He'd interrupt Sarah mid-sentence to correct her or finish her stories with his own version. Sarah said he was just confident and passionate. I said he was compensating for something. We laughed about it over beer and nachos. She asked me to be a bridesman, one of 6 people standing up with her, and I accepted immediately. This was Sarah, my person, the friend who held me together when my dad died, the one who drove 3 hours in a snowstorm to bring me soup when I had the flu my first year teaching high school English. I would have done anything for her. That was my first mistake. The first red flag came in January 2019, 6 months before the wedding. Sarah called me on a Tuesday night, sounding frazzled. "Hey, so I need to ask you something about the wedding." "Sure, what's up?" "So we're trying to keep costs down, and I was wondering if you'd be okay with helping set up the venue the day before. Like, nothing major, just moving some chairs around, maybe helping with decorations." I was grading essays at my kitchen table, red pen in hand. "Yeah, of course. How long are we talking?" "Oh, maybe an hour or 2. You're so sweet, Marcus. I knew I could count on you." An hour or 2. I filed that away and went back to circling comma splices. The second red flag came in April when Sarah sent the bridesperson, group chat a message. "Hey team, so excited for July. Just a heads up, we're doing a pretty casual vibe. Think rustic chic. Also, we're doing our own hair and makeup to save money, so maybe watch some YouTube tutorials lol." One of the bridesmaids, a woman named Jenna who I'd never met, responded, "Wait, we're not getting our hair done professionally." Sarah, "Nah, but it'll be fun, like a getting ready party." I thought about my wife Emma, who'd paid for professional hair and makeup for her bridesmaids at our wedding because she wanted them to feel special. But okay. Different budgets, different priorities. I could work with that. The third red flag came in June when Sarah mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that the reception would have a cash bar. "Just for bridesmaids and regular guests," she clarified. "Brandon's taking care of his groomsmen. He's paying for their drinks but not ours." "Well, yeah, they're his boys. You know how guys are." I did know how guys are. I was a guy, and I knew that wasn't how anything should work. But I told myself it was fine. It was her wedding, her choices. I could buy my own drinks for one night. Looking back, I should have seen the pattern. Sarah was becoming someone who took and rationalized it as normal. But when you love someone, you make excuses. You tell yourself you're being supportive. You ignore the tightness in your chest that says something isn't right. July 12, 2019. My mom picked me up from my house in Ann Arbor at 6 in the morning. Emma stood in the doorway with Tyler on her hip and Maddie holding her hand, both kids still in pajamas. "You sure you don't want us to come?" Emma asked for the third time. "It's 8 hours each way, babe. And you'd be stuck at a venue in the middle of nowhere with a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old while I'm doing wedding stuff. That sounds like torture for everyone." She kissed me, her lips soft and familiar. "Okay, but call me if it gets weird." "It won't get weird." It got so weird. Mom and I drove through Michigan into Indiana, listening to podcasts and stopping for gas station coffee. She asked about Sarah, and I told her about the engagement, about Brandon, about how Sarah seemed happy. "Do you like him?" Mom asked. "Brandon." I hesitated. "I think he makes her happy." "That's not what I asked." "I think he's fine." Mom gave me that look, the one that said she could read all the things I wasn't saying, but she let it drop. We arrived at the Holiday Inn Express in Indianapolis around 2 in the afternoon. Mom hugged me goodbye in the parking lot. "Text me tonight, okay? Let me know you're safe." "I'm 28 years old, Mom." "You'll always be my baby." She squeezed my shoulders. "And Marcus, if something feels wrong, you can leave. You don't owe anyone your misery." I laughed. "It's a wedding, not a hostage situation." She didn't laugh back. Jenna picked me up at 3. She was maybe 30, with bleached blonde hair and the kind of forced cheerfulness that made me tired. She worked with Sarah at Mr. Chen's property management company and talked the entire 40-minute drive about her boyfriend drama, barely pausing for breath. The venue was a converted barn called Meadowbrook Estate, surrounded by cornfields and connected to the main road by a long gravel driveway. Pretty in that calculated rustic way, string lights, wooden beams, a bridal suite in the loft, but isolated. My phone had 1 bar of service. When we pulled up, there were already cars in the lot and people milling around folding tables on the lawn. I recognized Sarah's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Chen, setting out paper plates. Mr. Chen had aged since I'd last seen him, his hair gone gray at the temples, but he still had that same authoritative bearing. Mrs. Chen was wearing an apron and arranging casserole dishes. Sarah burst out of the barn in cut-off jean shorts and a tank top that said Bride Squad. She ran over and threw her arms around me. "Marcus, oh my God, you made it." She smelled like drugstore perfume and sunscreen. For a second, hugging her, I was 8 years old again, and we were building a fort out of couch cushions in my basement. "Wouldn't miss it," I said into her hair. She pulled back, grinning. "Okay, so this is super casual. We're doing a potluck lunch, everyone brought something, and then we'll do the rehearsal at 5, and then tonight we're just going to chill and hang out. Easy breezy." Easy breezy, the phrase that would haunt me. The potluck was spread across 3 folding tables. Macaroni and cheese that looked like it had been sitting in the sun too long. A suspicious potato salad with visible mayo separation. Hot dogs in a crockpot swimming in murky water. A tray of vegetables that had seen better days. And a pan of brownies that had the texture of rubber. I'm not a food snob. I've eaten dining hall food, gas station sushi, elementary school cafeteria mystery meat. But this was a special kind of grim. This was the food of people who didn't care. I loaded a paper plate with carrot sticks, a scoop of the least offensive-looking mac and cheese, and a brownie. I found a spot at a picnic table next to another bridesmaid, a quiet woman named Tessa who turned out to be Brandon's cousin. "First time meeting Sarah?" she asked. "No, we've been friends since we were kids." "Oh," she seemed surprised. I just figured since you came alone and everything. My wife and kids are back home. It's a long drive. Yeah, she poked at her potato salad. This is something. I laughed despite myself. Yeah. We ate in companionable silence, watching Sarah bounce from group to group, radiant and oblivious. After lunch, while we were standing around digesting questionable food, Sarah clapped her hands together. Okay, everyone. Before we do the rehearsal, I need all the bridesmaids and bridesmen, she pointed at me, to come inside for a sec. We followed her into the barn. It was dim and cool inside, smelling of wood and old hay. Sarah led us to an industrial-sized refrigerator in what looked like a catering kitchen. So, tonight we're going to be working on setup. I'll explain more later, and we won't have time to go get food. So I need everyone to make a plate now from the potluck and put it in the fridge. Then you can just heat it up later for dinner. I blinked. Wait, the potluck is also dinner. Yeah, easy right. Jenna asked the question I was thinking. Are we ordering pizza or something later? No, just the potluck. It's honestly so much food, and I don't want it to go to waste. I looked at the other bridesmaids. Tessa looked uncomfortable. Jenna looked confused. The other three, Brandon's sister Kayla and two of Sarah's work friends named Michelle and Diane, just shrugged and started making plates. I made another plate in a daze. More mac and cheese, another hot dog bun, some carrot sticks. I labeled it with my name on a piece of masking tape and put it in the fridge next to 5 other plates. This was dinner, at a wedding, leftover potluck reheated. I walked outside and called Emma. Hey, how's it going? Her voice was warm and normal, and I wanted to climb through the phone into our living room. It's interesting. I think I just made a doggy bag for myself out of a potluck to eat later as my dinner. She laughed. What? Yeah, long story. I'll tell you tonight. You okay? Yeah, it's not what I expected. Do you want me to order you a pizza? I can use DoorDash or something. I loved her so much in that moment. I don't think they deliver out here. It's literally in the middle of nowhere, but thank you. Okay, well, call me if you need an extraction. I'll drive down with the kids and rescue you. It's fine, it's just one night. Famous last words. The rehearsal was standard. Walk down the aisle, stand in order, don't lock your knees. The officiant was a friend of Brandon's dad, a jovial man who kept making jokes about the old ball and chain. Brandon's groomsmen laughed too loud. I stood in my designated spot next to Jenna and Tessa and watched Sarah practice walking down the aisle on her father's arm. Mr. Chen looked proud in that stoic, immigrant parent way. Sarah looked happy. I wanted to feel happy for her. I tried. After rehearsal, we gathered back on the lawn. It was almost 6 p.m. and the July sun was still high and hot. Brandon clapped his hands together. All right, boys, let's roll out. We've got reservations at the steakhouse downtown, and then we're hitting the hotel bar. The groomsmen cheered. They started walking toward their trucks, big, loud vehicles with truck nuts and political bumper stickers. Sarah called out, "Have fun, babe." Brandon jogged over, kissed her sloppily, and said, "You too. Don't do anything I wouldn't do." He and his groomsmen drove away in a convoy of diesel engines and country music. Sarah turned to us, still smiling. "Okay, team, time to get to work." "Work?" I asked. "Yeah, we need to set up for tomorrow. I have a whole list." She pulled out her phone and started reading. "We need to set up 60 chairs in rows, arrange 8 tables, iron all the tablecloths, make the bouquets and boutonnieres, and prep the appetizers for tomorrow." I stared at her. "Sarah, I'm wearing dress pants and leather shoes." "Oh," she looked down at my outfit like she was seeing it for the first time. "Do you have other clothes?" "No, I thought tonight was the bachelorette party. You said we'd be chilling." "This is the party. We're all hanging out together. It'll be fun." Fun, that word again. Jenna said carefully. How long is this going to take? Oh, probably just a few hours. We've got this. A few hours of manual labor, in dress clothes, on an empty stomach except for questionable potluck food. I looked at the other bridesmaids. Tessa looked miserable. Kayla, Brandon's sister, looked resigned, like she'd expected this. Michelle and Diane were already heading toward a pile of chairs. We didn't have a choice. We were stuck here. My mom was 40 minutes away at a hotel. I had no car. And saying no felt impossible, like I'd be ruining Sarah's wedding before it even started. So I said nothing. And I started moving chairs. For the next 6 hours, I worked harder than I'd worked in years. We hauled 60 folding chairs from a storage shed and arranged them in neat rows on the lawn. We carried 8 heavy round tables and positioned them according to Sarah's diagram. We ironed tablecloths, cream-colored, cheap polyester that fought the iron, until my shoulders screamed and my back locked up. I was sweating through my dress shirt. My shoes were covered in dust and grass stains. My hands were cramping. At one point, I was ironing with Kayla, Brandon's sister. She was maybe 25, taciturn, with the same aggressive jawline as her brother. "Does Brandon always leave the women to do the work?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. She snorted. "Always. Mom used to make excuses for him, but I gave up years ago. He's just selfish." "And Sarah's okay with that?" Kayla shrugged. "She will be until she isn't. Then she'll either leave or become like him. Most people do one or the other." It was the most insightful thing anyone said all weekend. By 8 p.m., we still had to make the bouquets. Sarah brought out buckets of flowers, roses, baby's breath, some kind of fern, and said, "Okay, I need 6 bouquets for us and 6 boutonnieres for the guys. There are tutorials on YouTube." None of us knew how to make bouquets. We sat on the lawn in the fading light, watching phone videos with our 1 bar of service, trying to wrap floral wire around stems while Sarah flitted around supervising. "Make sure the roses are front and center." "More baby's breath." "No, that's too much baby's breath." I made 3 bouquets that looked like something a child would assemble. My fingers were bleeding slightly from the wire. I didn't care anymore. At 9:30 p.m., Sarah finally declared us done. We trudged inside, exhausted and filthy, and she produced a single bottle of André champagne from the fridge. "To my girls and Marcus." She poured it into 7 mismatched glasses. I got maybe 4 ounces. We toasted, I drank. It tasted like regret. Then I went to the fridge, got my labeled plate of crusty mac and cheese and cold hot dog bun, and microwaved it in the dingy kitchen. I ate standing up, too tired to care that it tasted like sadness and bad decisions. Jenna sidled up next to me. "This is insane, right? Like I'm not crazy." "You're not crazy." "I thought we'd be like going to a bar or something, dancing, getting drunk, normal bachelorette stuff." "Yeah." "And her fiancé is at a steakhouse right now." "Yep." "What the fuck?" I didn't have an answer. I just chewed my rubbery mac and cheese and wondered how I'd ended up here. That night we slept in the barn loft on air mattresses Sarah had set up. 7 of us in one room, like a very depressing adult sleepover. The loft was hot and stuffy, and someone, I think Michelle, snored like a chainsaw. I lay awake on my slowly deflating air mattress, staring at the wooden beams overhead, and thought about Emma and the kids. I thought about my dad. I thought about whether he'd be disappointed in me for not standing up for myself. Around midnight I heard Tessa whisper, "You awake?" "Yeah." "This is the worst wedding I've ever been part of." "Same." "Why didn't you say no?" "Why didn't you?" She was quiet for a moment. "I'm Brandon's cousin, I have to be here." "I'm Sarah's oldest friend, so do I." "Do you?" I didn't answer, because I was starting to realize the answer was no. I didn't have to be here. I was choosing to be here out of some misguided sense of loyalty to a person who wasn't treating me like someone she valued. But it was too late now. I was trapped until tomorrow. I finally fell asleep around 2 a.m., my back aching, my stomach still slightly unsettled from the potluck, my mind spinning with resentment. I woke to someone shaking my shoulder. It was Jenna, her hair already in curlers, panic in her eyes. "Marcus, wake up, we have a problem." I sat up, my neck stiff from the terrible pillow. "What time is it?" "7, the wedding's at 11, and none of us know how to do fancy hair." I looked around the loft. The other bridesmaids were in various states of distress. Michelle was crying because she'd burned her forehead with a curling iron. Diane was staring at a YouTube tutorial like it was written in hieroglyphics. Kayla was just sitting cross-legged on her air mattress, looking resigned to whatever hell the day would bring. Sarah was across the room in a chair, with a professional hairstylist working on an elaborate updo, while a makeup artist waited beside her with a tackle box of cosmetics. "Sarah," Jenna called out, "we don't know what to do with our hair." Sarah glanced over, her face half covered in primer. "Just, try to do something elegant. There are tons of tutorials online." "Can we pay your stylist to do ours?" "Oh, she doesn't have time. She's booked back-to-back today. Sorry." She said sorry the way people say it when they're not sorry at all. The way people say it when they mean, "That's your problem, not mine." I stood up, my back screaming in protest. "Okay, everyone who needs hair help, come here." I spent the next 2 hours doing hair. I'm not a professional, but I'm a dad to 2 daughters, and I've learned through necessity how to do ponytails, Dutch braids, French braids, messy buns, and the occasional fancy updo for school pictures. I worked through 4 bridesmaids, pinning and spraying, and trying to make them look elegant enough for Sarah's Pinterest vision. By the time I finished, it was 9:45. I had 15 minutes to shower, get dressed, and do something with my own hair. I threw on my navy suit, splashed water on my face, slicked back my hair with the travel-sized gel I'd packed, and called it good enough. When we assembled for photos at 10:30, Sarah took one look at me and said, "Oh, Marcus, did you not have time to do your hair?" I smiled tightly. "Nope, I was doing everyone else's." "Oh," she blinked like this hadn't occurred to her. "Well, you look fine." Fine, I looked fine. The professional photographer arranged us for pictures. Sarah looked gorgeous. Objectively, she did. Her dress was simple and elegant, her hair was perfect, her makeup was flawless. She looked like a bride from a magazine. I looked like a guy who'd slept 3 hours on a deflating air mattress and spent the morning as an unpaid hairstylist. The photos reflected that. The ceremony itself was fine. Standard wedding fare, processional music, vows that sounded like they came from the knot, readings about love being patient and kind. Sarah cried. Brandon's voice cracked when he said, "I do." People in the audience sniffled. I stood in my designated spot and tried to feel something other than exhaustion and resentment. I tried to remember why I'd agreed to this. I tried to access the part of me that loved Sarah, that wanted her to be happy. But all I could think about was the 6 hours of labor, the crusty potluck, the fact that Brandon and his groomsmen had gotten steaks and drinks while we'd got nothing. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," and everyone cheered, I clapped mechanically. Sarah and Brandon walked back down the aisle, beaming, and the groomsmen whooped like they were at a football game. We followed them out. The July sun was brutal. I was already sweating through my suit jacket. The photographer wanted more pictures. We stood in various configurations for 45 minutes while Sarah directed us. Michelle, move to the left. Marcus, smile more. Kayla, stand up straighter. I smiled until my face hurt. Finally, blessedly, we were released. The cocktail hour was starting. I needed a drink. The reception was in the barn, which had been transformed by our labor into something actually nice. The tables looked good with their iron tablecloths and our amateur flower arrangements. String lights cast a warm glow. A local band was setting up in the corner. And outside, a barbecue food truck had arrived, promising pulled pork and brisket. I got in line, my stomach growling. The food was fine, not great, but fine. Better than the potluck, which was all I cared about. Then I headed to the bar, a folding table with a handwritten sign that said, "Cash only." I ordered a beer. The bartender said, "That'll be $6. I pulled out my wallet and paid. $6 for a beer at a wedding I'd worked 6 hours to set up. Fine, whatever. I could afford $6. But then I noticed Brandon's groomsmen were at the bar constantly. Like every 10 minutes, someone was getting another drink. They were getting progressively louder and drunker, slapping each other's backs, doing shots, singing off-key. I found Sarah during a lull in the reception. She was glowing, radiant, riding the high of being the center of attention. "Hey, Sarah, quick question. What's the deal with the open bar for the groomsmen?" She looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Your bridesmaids are paying for drinks, but Brandon's groomsmen are getting them for free." "Oh, yeah. Brandon paid for them to have an open bar. He wanted to make sure his boys had a good time." I stared at her. "He paid for an open bar for his friends, but not for yours." "Well, yeah, they're his groomsmen. It's different." "How is it different?" She looked at me like I was being unreasonable. "Marcus, it's not a big deal. It's just drinks." "Just drinks. Just 6 hours of labor, just crusty potluck, just everything." "Right," I said, "not a big deal." I walked away before I said something I'd regret. The reception wound down around 9 p.m. Sarah and Brandon were supposed to leave at 10 for their honeymoon, a week in Cancun that Sarah had posted about extensively on Instagram. At 9:30, a massive white stretch limo pulled up outside the barn. It was absurd and ostentatious, the kind of vehicle that screams, "We have too much money and questionable taste." Sarah gasped, actually gasped, her hands flying to her mouth like she was in a rom-com. "Oh my God, what is that?" Mr. Chen walked over, grinning. "Surprise, sweetheart. Your mother and I wanted to send you off in style." Sarah squealed and hugged her father. "This is amazing, thank you so much." She turned to me, her eyes shining. "Marcus, look, my parents got us a limo." "It's great," I said flatly. "You know, since you moved away, my parents have done really, really well. They invested in properties all over Indianapolis. They're like multimillionaires now." The word hung in the air, multimillionaires. I felt something cold and heavy settle in my stomach. Really? Yeah, they paid for the whole wedding, actually. They've been so generous. Generous? I looked around the barn, at the tables we'd set up, at the tablecloths we'd ironed, at the bouquets we'd made, at the potluck we'd eaten twice, at the cash bar I'd paid into while the groomsmen drank for free. I looked at the limo that probably cost more than everything else combined. "That's great, Sarah," I said. My voice sounded like it was coming from very far away. "Really great." She hugged me, crushing her bouquet between us. She smelled like champagne and hairspray and happiness. "Thank you for being here, Marcus. It means so much." I hugged her back because I didn't know what else to do. She and Brandon climbed into the limo, waving through the sunroof as it drove away, trailing white ribbon and tin cans. Everyone cheered. I stood there numb, watching the taillights disappear down the gravel road. Mr. and Mrs. Chen approached the remaining bridesmaids and groomsmen. Most of Brandon's friends had already left or were too drunk to be useful. It was mostly just us, the women who'd worked our asses off. Mr. Chen clapped his hands together. "Okay, folks, we need to tear down the venue by midnight. Rental contract, let's get started." I looked at him, really looked at him, at his expensive watch, his tailored shirt, his shoes that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. You're asking us to clean up, I said. Well, yes. The contract specifies that we return it to its original state. You paid for this wedding. Yes. You're millionaires. He frowned. I don't see how that's relevant. You could hire people to clean this up. That seems like an unnecessary expense. An unnecessary expense, unlike the limo, unlike the open bar for the groomsmen. I felt something break inside me, not dramatically, quietly, like a wire snapping under too much tension. No, I said. Mrs. Chen blinked. Excuse me. No, I'm not cleaning up, I'm done. Marcus, we need everyone's help. I've given you 12 hours of free labor. I'm not giving you another minute. I pulled out my phone and called my mom. It rang once, twice, 3 times. She picked up, her voice sleepy. Marcus, what's wrong? Can you come get me, right now? Of course, I'll be there in 30 minutes. I hung up. The other bridesmaids were staring at me. Tessa looked like she wanted to applaud. Jenna looked terrified. I looked at Mr. and Mrs. Chen. You should be ashamed of yourselves. And then I walked out of that barn and didn't look back. My mom pulled up 28 minutes later. I climbed into her passenger seat, still in my suit, and put my head in my hands. What happened? She asked gently. I told her everything. The potluck, the labor, the air mattress, the hair, the drinks, the limo, the millionaire parents, the cleanup demand. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I'm proud of you for leaving. Really? Really? Some people would have stayed and let themselves be used. You stood up for yourself. I feel like an asshole. You're not an asshole, they are. We drove in silence for a while. Then I asked, Mom, when did Sarah change? Or was she always like this and I just didn't see it? People don't change, honey. They just reveal themselves over time. And sometimes we love who we hope someone is instead of who they actually are. That hit harder than I expected. When we got back to Ann Arbor at 2 in the morning, Emma was waiting up. She took one look at me and said, Oh, baby. I collapsed into her arms and told her the whole story again. She listened, stroking my hair, and when I finished she said, You're never seeing her again, right? No. I said, I don't think I am. And I meant it. At least I thought I did. For the next 6 months I tried to move on. I didn't block Sarah on social media. That felt too dramatic, but I muted her posts. I texted her happy birthday in October when Facebook reminded me, and she responded with THX, and nothing else. I told myself it was over. The friendship had run its course. People grow apart. It happens. But I kept thinking about it. The injustice of it gnawed at me in quiet moments, when I was grading papers, when I was driving to work, when I was lying in bed at 3 a.m., unable to sleep. I kept thinking about Mr. and Mrs. Chen's faces when they asked us to clean up, the casual entitlement, the complete lack of awareness. I kept thinking about Sarah saying, It's not a big deal, about the open bar disparity. I kept thinking about Brandon pulling away in that limo while we stood there, exhausted and used. And I started to get angry, really angry, the kind of anger that doesn't burn hot, it burns cold and steady, like a pilot light that never goes out. Emma noticed. You're still thinking about the wedding, she said one night in November. Yeah. Marcus, you need to let it go. I know. Do you? I didn't answer. In December, Sarah and Brandon came to visit. I'd extended the invitation months earlier, before the wedding, and they were driving through Michigan to visit Brandon's family for Christmas. They wanted to stop by for a night. I should have canceled. Emma told me to cancel, but some masochistic part of me wanted to see them, to see if Sarah would acknowledge what happened, to see if she'd apologize. She didn't. They arrived on a Saturday afternoon. Sarah hugged me like everything was normal. Brandon gave me one of those aggressive handshakes that men do when they're insecure. They came inside, met Tyler and Maddie, and immediately Brandon started acting like he owned the place. He complained about our coffee. He criticized our TV setup. He made jokes about how small our house was. And then he started messing with our dog. Maverick was a 7-year-old golden retriever, the sweetest animal alive. He'd been my dad's dog originally. Dad had gotten him as a puppy just a few months before he died, and we'd inherited him. Maverick was gentle with the kids, patient, loving. Brandon thought it was hilarious to pull his tail. The first time I thought it was an accident. Maverick yelped and jumped away. I said, "Hey, don't do that." Brandon laughed. "Oh, he's fine. Dogs love playing rough." "He doesn't, please don't." "Whatever, man, you're making him soft." I let it go. Emma shot me a look but didn't say anything in front of our guests. The second time I was in the kitchen making lunch. I heard Maverick yelp again and Tyler's voice. "Dad, he's doing it again." I walked into the living room. Brandon had Maverick's tail in his hand, pulling hard enough that Maverick was trying to twist away, whimpering. "Stop," I said, not loudly, very quietly. Brandon let go, holding up his hands in mock surrender. "Whoa, okay, sensitive subject. He's an animal. He can't tell you when you're hurting him." I barely touched him. Maverick had retreated to his bed in the corner, tail tucked, looking at Brandon with confused, hurt eyes. Tyler was sitting on the floor next to him, stroking his head. Sarah, sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone, didn't even look up. "Brandon, maybe just leave the dog alone." "I am leaving him alone, Jesus." We ate lunch in tense silence. Afterward, Brandon wanted to watch football. I said sure and put on the game, but I couldn't concentrate. I kept watching him, waiting for him to do something else, waiting for an excuse. That night, after they'd left for Brandon's parents' house, Emma said what we were both thinking. "We're not staying friends with them." "No." She didn't even apologize for the wedding. "No. And he's cruel, to animals and people." "Yeah." She took my hand. "Marcus, I know you loved her, the old her, but that person is gone, and you don't owe the new her anything." I knew she was right, but knowing something intellectually and accepting it emotionally are different things. Over the next few weeks, I kept replaying the visit. The tail pulling, the way Sarah had barely reacted, the way neither of them seemed to think they'd done anything wrong at the wedding or in our house. And I started thinking about revenge. Not the hot, immediate kind, not slashing tires or sending angry letters, but something else, something patient and calculated. Something that would prove a point. The idea came to me in February 2020 during a school snow day. I was sitting at my kitchen table grading essays when my phone rang. It was Daniel Park, a friend from college who'd gone into real estate investment. "Marcus, how's teaching?" "It's good, cold, what's up?" "I've got an opportunity I wanted to run by you. You remember me telling you about that property near Butler University?" "Vaguely." "The owner's desperate to sell. His business failed and he needs liquidity fast. It's a 3-bedroom house in a great neighborhood, walking distance to campus. Needs some cosmetic work but structurally sound. He's asking $80,000. I pulled up Zillow on my laptop while Daniel talked. The house was in the old North Side neighborhood of Indianapolis, a gentrifying area with big trees and historic homes. Comparable properties were selling for $120, $130. "That's undervalued," I said. "Significantly, which is why I'm calling you. I know you've got your dad's life insurance money sitting in savings." I did. $70,000 I'd been holding onto for 8 years, unable to spend because it felt like spending him. It was just sitting there, earning minimal interest, waiting for something that felt worthy. "What kind of return are we talking?" I asked. "If you flip it, Probably 30,000 profit after renovation costs. If you rent it, you're looking at 1,400 a month in rent, mortgage of maybe 600. That's substantial monthly cash flow. I did quick mental math. And what's the neighborhood like? Mostly grad students and young professionals. Butler's expanding, the area's appreciating. It's a good investment. I thought about it for approximately 10 seconds before I realized this was exactly what I'd been looking for. Not consciously. I hadn't been consciously looking for anything. But subconsciously, I'd been waiting for an opportunity to prove something. To prove I could be better than the Chens. That I could build something on principles instead of exploitation. And yes, let's be honest, to compete in the one arena where they operated. Who manages properties in that area? I asked casually. A bunch of different companies. Chen Property Management has a lot of units around there. Why? Chen Property Management, Mr. Chen's company, where Sarah worked. No reason, just curious. I was lying, I had every reason. So are you interested? I looked at Emma across the room playing with Tyler and Maddie. She glanced up, caught my eye and smiled. I thought about my dad, about what he would say. He'd always believed in honest work, fair dealing, treating people with dignity. This could be that, or it could be revenge dressed up as business. Maybe it could be both. Yeah, I said, I'm interested. I bought the property in March 2020, just before the world shut down for COVID. Daniel connected me with contractors who owed him favors, and we renovated while everyone was locked inside. New flooring, fresh paint, updated appliances, landscaping. Nothing fancy, but everything functional and clean. By June, it was ready to rent. I listed it at $1,300 a month, cheaper than Chen Property Management's comparable units, but not suspiciously so, just competitive. The first applicant was a Butler grad student named Leila Monroe. She was getting her master's in social work, had good credit, excellent references, and seemed genuinely kind. During the video tour, everything was virtual because of lockdown. She asked thoughtful questions about the neighborhood, about utilities, about whether I allowed pets. I have a cat, she said. Is that okay? Absolutely. No pet deposit, just include him in the lease. She blinked. Really, most places charge $200 or $300. I like cats, and I don't think people should be punished for wanting companionship. She smiled. That's refreshing. I've been looking for 2 months and everyone's been so, she paused, not kind. Well, I'm trying to do this differently. And I meant it. That was the thing. This started as revenge, but I realized early on that the best revenge was actually just being better, treating tenants like humans, maintaining properties properly, responding to maintenance requests within 24 hours, charging fair rent. All the things Mr. Chen didn't do. Leila moved in July 1st. Within a week, she'd left a 5-star Google review. Marcus is the best landlord I've ever had. Responsive, fair, and actually cares about his tenants. The house is beautiful and well-maintained. Highly recommend. That review was the first domino. Over the next 18 months, I bought 3 more properties in Indianapolis. I financed them carefully using the rental income from the first property, reinvesting profits, keeping my teaching salary separate for our family expenses. Daniel helped me navigate the market, and I got better at spotting opportunities. I developed a system: buy undervalued properties in appreciating neighborhoods, renovate them to be safe, clean, and comfortable, not luxury, just dignified, charge slightly below market rate, be responsive, treat tenants like people. Revolutionary, apparently. My properties filled immediately. Tenants left glowing reviews. Word spread in the Butler University community, then to IUPUI, then to young professionals moving to Indianapolis for work. Meanwhile, Chen Property Management was struggling. I tracked their listings obsessively. I won't pretend I didn't. I watched their properties sit vacant longer. I watched their reviews get worse. Took 3 weeks to fix the furnace in January. Charged me for damages that existed before I moved in. Avoid this company. By late 2021, Mr. Chen had lost significant market share in the old Northside neighborhood. I didn't have numbers, but I had context. I heard through Daniel that Chen Property Management had laid off staff, that they were selling properties. I never reached out to Sarah, never gloated, never even acknowledged what I was doing. I just kept being better. Emma knew, of course. "You're doing this because of the wedding," she said one night in December 2021. "No. Marcus." "Okay, yes, it started because of the wedding, but it's become something else. I'm actually good at this. And I'm helping people, giving them safe, affordable housing with a landlord who gives a shit. That's not revenge, that's just good business." "Can it be both?" I thought about that. "Yeah, maybe it can." She kissed my forehead. "Just don't lose yourself in it. Revenge has diminishing returns." She was right, but I wasn't ready to stop yet. In August 2022, Sarah finally reached out. It was the first real message I'd gotten from her since the wedding. 3 years of near silence broken by a Facebook message at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. "Hey Marcus, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I need to ask you something. Are you investing in Indianapolis real estate?" My heart rate spiked. I sat in my home office, staring at the screen, while Emma slept down the hall and the house creaked in the summer heat. I could lie, I could deflect, but I'd been waiting for this moment for 3 years. "Yeah," I typed, "I own a few rental properties, why?" The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "My dad's company has been struggling. He thinks someone's undercutting him, some new landlord who's taking all his tenants." I waited 5 seconds before responding, let her sit with it. "That sucks, the market's competitive." Another pause, then, "Is it you?" There it was, the question, the moment of truth. I could still lie, could maintain plausible deniability, could say it was just coincidence, just business, just the invisible hand of the free market. But I didn't want to lie anymore. "Yeah," I typed, "it's me." My phone rang immediately. Sarah's name lit up the screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "What the fuck, Marcus?" "Hello to you too. You're sabotaging my dad's business. Are you serious right now?" I leaned back in my desk chair, suddenly very calm. "I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm running a better business. There's a difference." "Oh, come on. You know exactly what you're doing." "I do. I'm offering fair rent, well-maintained properties, and responsive service. Your dad's losing tenants because he's been cutting corners for years and treating people like income sources instead of human beings." "That's not." "Sarah, I've read the reviews. I've talked to former tenants. Your dad charges premium rent for substandard properties and ignores maintenance requests. I'm just offering an alternative." "Because you're still mad about the wedding." Her voice was sharp, accusatory. "Because you're petty and vindictive." "Yes," I said, "and also because it's good business. Both things can be true." "The wedding was 3 years ago. You need to let it go." Something hot flashed through me. "You never apologized." "What?" "You never apologized. Not once. Not for making us work 6 hours in dress clothes. Not for feeding us leftover potluck while your husband's friends got steaks and an open bar. Not for asking us to clean up after your millionaire parents' wedding. You just moved on like it didn't matter. It was one weekend. It was 20 years of friendship that you threw away because you stopped seeing me as a person. I became free labor, a prop, someone who existed to serve your needs." Silence on the other end. I kept going, years of quiet rage finally finding words. "And you know what the worst part was? Finding out your parents could have made it nice. They could have hired help, paid for professional hair and makeup, offered a proper meal, covered the bar. They had the money. They just didn't think we were worth spending it on. That's not fair. And when Brandon came to our house and pulled my dog's tail, you didn't care. When he was cruel and domineering and made our kids uncomfortable, you just sat there on your phone. Because you'd learned from your parents that some people matter and some people don't. And I fell into the don't category. Marcus. So yeah, I invested in real estate in your dad's market. And yeah, I undercut his prices and offered better service. And if that's revenge, fine. But it's also just being a better person. Something your family could try sometime. The silence stretched. Then Sarah said very quietly, "You're an asshole." "Probably," I said, "but at least I pay my friends for their labor." She hung up. I sat there in the dark office, phone in hand, and waited to feel something. Victory, maybe, vindication. Instead, I just felt tired. Emma appeared in the doorway in her pajamas. I heard yelling. Sarah called. And she knows about the properties. She's pissed. Emma came over and wrapped her arms around me from behind. "How do you feel?" "Empty." "That's normal. Revenge doesn't fill anything. It just redistributes the hurt." "Then why did I do it?" "Because you needed to. Because she needed consequences. Because you needed to prove you could stand up for yourself." She kissed the top of my head. "And now it's done." "Is it?" "Only if you let it be." Sarah blocked me on social media. So did Brandon. Mrs. Chen sent me a lengthy Facebook message calling me vindictive, cruel, and petty, which I didn't respond to. Mr. Chen tried to leave a negative review on my property management page claiming I was unethical and predatory, but it got flagged and removed for violating terms of service. Through mutual friends, I heard that Sarah and Brandon's marriage was struggling. Money problems, mostly. Brandon had been fired from another construction job for showing up drunk. Sarah was working 70-hour weeks at her dad's failing company, trying to keep it afloat. They'd had to move in with Brandon's parents to save money. I should have felt satisfied. I didn't. I felt like I'd won a game nobody should have been playing in the first place. In September 2022, Maverick got sick. We noticed he was losing weight, not eating, moving slowly. The vet found tumors in his abdomen, stage 4 cancer, maybe 2 months left. Tyler and Maddie were devastated. They'd grown up with Maverick. He was the connection to their grandfather they'd never known. Emma and I spent Maverick's last weeks making him comfortable. Steak dinners, long gentle walks, sleeping in our bed. When we put him down in November, I held him while the vet administered the injection. I felt his breathing slow, then stop. I thought about my dad, about how death comes for everything we love eventually, about how some cruelties are small enough to forget until they become emblems of larger ones. I didn't blame Brandon for Maverick's cancer. That would be insane. But I did blame him for making Maverick's life a little bit worse, for adding unnecessary pain to a creature that had done nothing but love. And I realized that's what the wedding had been too, an unnecessary cruelty. Not the worst thing in the world, not even close, but unnecessary, preventable, a choice to value appearance and money over dignity and kindness. At Maverick's grave in our backyard, I cried for everything, for my dad, for my dog, for the friendship I'd lost, for the person Sarah had become, for the fact that revenge had fixed nothing. Emma held my hand. "You okay?" "No." "That's okay." I thought getting even would make me feel better. Did it? No, it just made me realize how far we'd all fallen. It's October 2025 now. I'm 31 years old. I teach 11th grade English at Ann Arbor Pioneer High School. I own 5 rental properties in Indianapolis that collectively generate about $4,000 a month in profit after expenses. That money goes into college funds for Tyler and Maddie. with some set aside for Emma to eventually go back to school if she wants. Mr. Chen's company went under in early 2024. He and Mrs. Chen sold their house and moved into a condo. They're not destitute, they're fine, relatively speaking, but they're no longer the millionaires Sarah bragged about. They're just people in their 60s with some property equity and modest retirement savings. Normal, in other words. Sarah and Brandon are still married somehow. They moved out of Brandon's parents' house into a small apartment. Sarah got a job at Target. Brandon's in AA, apparently taking it seriously this time. I heard all this through mutual friends, people from our hometown who stayed in touch with both of us and carefully navigated the awkwardness. I don't feel victorious. I feel like someone who played a game with no winners and walked away with nothing but the knowledge that I'd participated in something ugly. But I also don't regret it, not exactly. Because here's what I learned. Revenge doesn't heal wounds. It doesn't restore friendships. It doesn't make you feel better in any lasting way. But consequences matter. People need to understand that their actions have effects that ripple outward, that cruelty compounds, that you can't treat people like tools and expect no response. Sarah never learned that lesson from her parents. They taught her that money buys insulation from accountability, that appearances matter more than integrity, that some people exist to serve and others exist to be served. So I taught her differently. I taught her that markets reward quality, that fairness attracts loyalty, that you can't shortcut your way to success by exploiting people. I taught her by beating her family at their own game, using their own rules. Was it petty? Absolutely. Was it effective? Yes. Was it right? I honestly don't know. Last week, October 2025, 3 years after our phone argument, I got a text from an unknown number. "Hey Marcus, it's Sarah. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to say I'm sorry for the wedding, for everything. You deserved better. I was so wrapped up in my own shit that I didn't see how I was treating people. I'm in therapy now, trying to figure out how I became someone I don't recognize. Anyway, I'm sorry. You don't have to respond. I just needed to say it." I stared at that message for a long time. 3 years ago, that apology would have meant everything. It would have felt like vindication, like proof that I'd been right all along. Now it just felt sad. Like finding a $20 bill in a coat you don't wear anymore, technically valuable but practically irrelevant. I showed Emma. "What are you going to say?" she asked. "I don't know. Part of me wants to ignore it. Part of me wants to send a whole essay. Part of me just wants to say thanks and move on." "What does your gut say?" I thought about it. That she's trying, that therapy is hard and admitting you're wrong is harder, that maybe she's actually changing. "Do you want to be friends again?" "No," I said immediately. "Too much has happened, but I don't want to be enemies either." "Then tell her that." I typed, "Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. I hope you're doing okay." She replied 5 minutes later, "I'm getting there. One day at a time. And Marcus, I read about your rental properties. My dad told me you're doing really good work. Better than we ever did, I mean that." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just sent, "Thanks." And that was it. No grand reconciliation. No friendship reborn. Just two people acknowledging that hurt happened and trying to move forward separately. Emma asked me later if I felt closure. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe closure is a myth. Maybe it's just knowing you did your best with what you had." "Did you?" I thought about that question. About the wedding, the labor, the humiliation. About buying properties in Indianapolis. About undercutting Chen Property Management. About the cold satisfaction of watching them struggle. About whether my best self would have done any of this. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I think I did what I needed to do. Whether that's the same as my best, I can't say." She kissed my forehead. "That's probably the most honest answer you could give." So what's the moral here? What's the takeaway from this whole ugly story? I've thought about it a lot, too much probably. Here's what I've come up with. Revenge doesn't fix anything. It doesn't heal wounds or restore relationships or make you whole. It's just anger with a plan, and when the plan completes, the anger is still there, plus the knowledge of what you've done. But consequences matter. People need to understand that their actions affect others, that cruelty compounds, that you can't treat people badly and expect unconditional forgiveness. There's a difference between revenge and justice, and it's thinner than I thought. Justice is external, courts and systems and impartial judgment. Revenge is personal, you and your hurt and your need to make someone understand. What I did was somewhere in between. I didn't break any laws. I didn't harm anyone directly. I just competed better in a market where the Chens had gotten comfortable exploiting people. I provided an alternative, and their business suffered because they'd built it on shifting sand. That's capitalism, that's competition, that's consequence. But I'd be lying if I said it wasn't also revenge. Because I chose that market. I chose that neighborhood. I chose to compete specifically with Mr. Chen's company. I could have invested anywhere, Detroit, Chicago, any city with rental opportunities. I chose Indianapolis because I wanted them to feel what it's like to be undervalued, undercut, and dismissed. And they did, and it didn't make me happy. It just made me understand that some games have no winners. Today, a Sunday in October 2025, I'm sitting in my backyard watching Tyler play soccer with Emma while Maddie practices cartwheels. The weather's perfect, cool and crisp, leaves turning red and gold, the smell of someone's fireplace in the air. My phone buzzes. It's Daniel texting about another property opportunity in Indianapolis. A fourplex this time, recently foreclosed below market value. I could buy it, I have the capital, it would be a good investment. But I think about Sarah's text from last week, about her trying to change, going to therapy, admitting her mistakes, about how my continued success in her dad's former market is a constant reminder of their failure. Is that justice, or is that just grinding someone's face in their own mistakes? I text Daniel back, I'm good, looking at opportunities in Detroit instead, thanks though. He responds, smart, Indianapolis market's saturated anyway. Emma looks over, seeing me on my phone, work. Just Daniel, another property thing. You turning it down? Yeah. She smiles, good. Yeah. Yeah, I think you've proved whatever you needed to prove. Now you can just be good at this because you're good at it, not because you're angry. She's right, she usually is. Tyler kicks the soccer ball too hard, and it sails over the fence into our neighbor's yard. He looks at me, sheepish. I'll get it, I say, pushing myself up from the patio chair. As I walk around the fence, I think about my dad, about what he'd say about all this, about the wedding, the revenge, the properties, the consequences, the apology. I think he'd say, did you treat people fairly? And I did. My tenants have safe, clean housing at reasonable prices with responsive service. I've helped people. I've built something good, even if the motivation started dark. I think he'd also say, did it make you happy? And that's the harder question. It made me feel vindicated, powerful, capable, right. But happy, no. Revenge doesn't make you happy, it just makes you busy. What makes me happy is Tyler's laughter when he scores a goal, Maddie's concentration face when she's reading, Emma's hand in mine during movie night, teaching a student how to write a sentence that actually says something. The small things, the real things, the things that don't require anyone else to lose. I grab the soccer ball from the neighbor's yard and walk back. Tyler runs up, grinning. Thanks, Dad. No problem, buddy. He runs off and I watch him play and I think, this is enough. This is actually enough. Sarah can have her apology and her therapy and her growth. I can have my properties and my students and my family. We can both be okay without being friends. We can both move forward without forgiveness. We can both learn different lessons from the same terrible weekend. And maybe that's the only closure that really exists, accepting that some stories don't end cleanly. They just end. The wedding was almost 6 years ago now. It feels like a lifetime. It feels like yesterday. I'm not the same person who drove to Indianapolis in July 2019, excited to celebrate his best friend. I'm harder now, more careful, less trusting. But also stronger, more capable, better at standing up for myself. The revenge changed me, not for better or worse, just different. And I'm learning to live with that difference. To accept that I'm someone who took revenge, who calculated and competed and won, and who has to live with what that winning cost. Because everything costs something. Even justice. Especially revenge. This is a story about a friendship that died slowly and a revenge that succeeded hollowly. It's about learning that being right doesn't make you whole, that consequences don't equal healing, that you can win and still lose. Marcus isn't a hero. He's just a person who was hurt and chose to hurt back, carefully, legally, effectively, and discovered that satisfaction is not the same as happiness. Sarah isn't a villain. She's just a person who learned the wrong lessons from the wrong people and is now, finally, trying to unlearn them. They're both just humans, stumbling through life, making choices, living with consequences. And sometimes that's all revenge is. A choice you live with, long after the anger fades, wondering if you'd do it differently if you could go back. But you can't go back. You can only go forward and try to build something better than what you destroyed.